Bro, thanks for taking the call. I think everyone is super excited right now, right? So I figured that you would be the best person to, talk about esports and Yu-Gi-Oh since you're in an esports organization yourself. I guess you're the CFO of an esports organization yourself, so you would have the best insight into a lot of the questions that I think many of the community are probably thinking. And so I'll just try to maybe convey some of the thoughts and curiosity that people currently have.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely have a lot of thoughts on esports and Yu-Gi-Oh.
Right, right, right.
So yeah.
Um, I guess we'll start with the first question. What does esports in Yu-Gi-Oh look like for you?
So
What's I guess what do you envision when you think about esports in Yu-Gi-Oh? And maybe if you want to also kind of maybe introduce yourself for everyone else, and also maybe talk about your who you are, so people can also know.
yeah. So first, I'm John. It's great to be on stream. Um, so I'm the CFO for the Pittsburgh Knights. We are an esports organization based out in Pittsburgh, and we have eight. We compete in 8 different games. Primarily the large ones are Valorant, Rocket League. We also have like Rainbow Six, Gears of War, and a lot of the top sort of PC games out there. We also recently picked up a Halo team, and yeah, so I've been around the company since almost inception for going on almost 5 years.
Wow.
So being in the industry has been quite a roller coaster, and hoping to give people some insight on some of my thoughts.
Yeah, and you're also a Yu-Gi-Oh player yourself, right? So you're not completely oblivious to the scene.
No, no, I mean I played Yu-Gi-Oh back in like 2010 to
Okay.
2011.
Okay.
In like Edison sort of format,
Mhm.
in the peak, right? And then I quit during, I don't know, like wind up in Zector format just because that was pretty toxic. And then I came back recently in 2019, no, 2020, basically during COVID, and been playing since, and I still play now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I mean, I guess we'll jump right into the question at hand, kind of as
What
someone
what
who's
what is
yeah.
what does esports and Yu-Gi-Oh look
Yes,
like,
what is
right?
what is esports in Yu-Gi-Oh look like? What is esports all give us the rundown.
Yeah, so man, esports is so tough. I think Yu-Gi-Oh it's a great game. I think Yu-Gi-Oh rides on viewership. Um, so I mean, basically, esports, the amount of money that they really generate is primarily on viewership. So if it can have a viewership experience, then it can survive as an esport. Um,
Okay.
Things that have tough viewership experiences tend to be more difficult. For example, like Overwatch, I think is a great game, fun game to play. However, I think the difficulty was kind of viewing it and watching the experience that you get from that. So, and then obviously just there's delays and a lot of issues there. But Yu-Gi-Oh! And esports, I think, or esports and Yu-Gi-Oh! I think a lot of it has to ride on the developer. So I think Konami, which I know is going to be really difficult because I mean, I would say Konami in general is hard to get in contact with, but I think Konami has to be a very big part of the ecosystem. They currently already run, YCS's Worlds and a lot of that, and I think also the direction for esports and Yu-Gi-Oh is going to lie in the esports teams. So I'm sure all of you guys have seen the 100 Thieves post, to kind of stir up some possibilities of esports in Yu-Gi-Oh! And just from my own analysis, I think it's 100% gonna be a thing. I think
Okay.
that Master Duel was a great kind of start to see what this can be. I think that it being digital is a lot easier as an esports experience. I think the difficulties of running remote duels have deterred people away from running events and kind of doing a lot of that. But I think with Master Duel it being easily accessible, and I think the viewership is really high, and I think that I think there's 100% a possibility of it becoming an esport.
That's awesome. Honestly, that was really insightful. And I guess from your perspective, right? Like, I don't know how much information you can share with us, but are you looking to like create a team? If you are, like, what type of players are you looking for? Right? I think that's what the community kind of wants to know, because everyone, I think, in some part wishes they would get sponsored by an esports organization. So from your perspective, like, what does it take to be sponsored by an esports organization? And from your perspective, like, like, who are you looking for, right?
Right. So I think everyone's kind of riding to see what Konami does with tournaments first,
Yep.
because ultimately the value that we get from having a player in any game is going to be how popular that game is, what the viewership is like, and how we can get that player in front of millions of eyes. So if Konami runs a Master Duel tournament that has 100,000 viewers, for example, there's a lot more value in having a professional player if they're going to be shown like potentially on camera and or have somehow the esports branding in front of 100,000 people. So a lot of that's really really important. And for at least for the Knights, I mean, I can share a little bit about the strategy. So I've been pushing a lot internally from my own
Okay.
perspective, only because it's a big passion for me.
Yeah.
And I am looking right now to sign a player. I can't exactly say who, but that is something that I have in the works right now.
It's awesome.
And I know earlier today you had mentioned that the organizations aren't running, or like basically that the organizations don't run events, and you have to think
Yeah.
about third-party event organizers.
Yeah. That's
So
my
that
initial thought.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I would say that the majority of, I would say 95% of esports organizations really don't focus on events. That's something that we've been kind of focusing a lot on, and it's, as we've been running a lot of Valorant events and Rocket League events and all these different things, because I think events are a big part of building the camaraderie, building the communities and and the player base, uh, and within our own ecosystem. So just as a frame, I guess a test, I am also looking at running Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments. From
Okay.
the Knights perspective, I think the first one that we have that hasn't been announced yet, but it's gonna be looking is on the 5th and the 6th.
Hmm.
And I know you were looking at high prize money.
Yeah.
And that's the difficult thing, is that high prize money is really hard to justify.
Yeah.
So typically, the reason why you don't see a lot of high prize money is generally because developers will have a guideline, because you're practically trying to make a profit off of of you running a huge large prize pool, because theoretically you could get $100,000 sponsorship for that said event, and obviously that's something that developers don't want you to take advantage of. So you'll see
Hmm.
a lot of limits with events ran by the community. One, because it's really expensive, right, to just
Yeah.
constantly throw out events. So an approach that we're looking at doing is kind of starting with consistency, because one event for what, $10,000, $20,000, like there's no way any organization or any like third party company is going to sustain running $10,000 $20,000 events on a consistent basis. And sure, it's cool to have a one-off event, but it doesn't really get you anything. It doesn't really do anything. So I think what's more important is just creating consistency and eventually working on, uh, kind of the ecosystem around the game to build it so that it is sustainable long term. So like running, let's say, a couple $100 tournaments every week or every month, and have that consistent. And then maybe end of the year or something like that, you run a much larger event. So you build that sort of player base, similarly how like ESL did. Like they didn't start by running $1 million tournaments in the beginning. They started with smaller prize pool because they needed to build that repertoire. They need to build the trust with the public in order to then, have confidence. Hey, I'm gonna run a $20,000 event. I already have, let's say, 1,000 players that's going to come because they've been to our previous events. Now I have that trust. We're going to get 3 times the amount of people. So it's really
Okay.
interesting to think about
So you're kind of like saying like
that
you're it's
growth.
like a build up, right? Like you're slowly
Yeah.
building up, and then as the community starts to like be more, involved, they're gonna be like, okay, wait, these guys actually host this tournament pretty well. Let's play in more of them. Okay, there's a lot of people playing in tournaments. Okay, maybe we should try and get in as well, right? I guess like some FOMO even. So I can understand what you're saying there.
Yeah.
For
A
sure.
lot of people come in and out for events all the time. You see a ton of brands trying to be like, yo, let me just put in like $2,000 prize pool for a game that like nobody cares about really. And then they just disappear. And it's like, oh, whoa, great. Now you just created this huge expectation of all these events being like $2,000. And now like nobody can afford it. So, I think Yu-Gi-Oh is really interesting because right now you're not going to see any large prize pool. Like nobody's really running tens of $1,000 prize pools. You're going to probably see most locals doing like,
What if?
maybe.
Yeah. What if that were to happen though?
What if that were to happen?
Yeah,
I think it would
because
be
yeah.
bad for the for the game, honestly.
Okay. Wait, wow. How
So
so?
So I think that by going too hard too fast, which has been, it's been done in a lot of other games, you create an unreal expectation on players that they won't want to play the smaller things, that they'll just wait for the big one. So that kind of like spreads it overall like spreads it thinner, and not many people are going to be playing in the smaller events. So I don't know. It's a toss up. I think it could be okay, but if without consistency, it kind of makes it much harder for other organizations or the other organizers to like really, you know, create something in the space.
Yeah. No, that was really insightful. So, I guess like from an esports perspective, like what do you guys like get out of this? Like, do you feel like it's the branding, the viewership, like the marketing, or like from your perspective, like where do you fit into all of this?
All of the above. So Yu-Gi-Oh is weird because there's really no like prize money. Like typically when you look at an organization for any like professional team, they'll win a chunk of prize money and you get a percentage of prize money. I'm not looking to get like, I don't know, half a booster pack from people's winnings. Like that just doesn't, that just doesn't make sense.
What do you mean,
So I
bro?
think yo, you won 2 OTS packs? Yo, give me one of them. That's the fee.
Whatever it
Um,
takes.
yeah, but I think for Yu-Gi-Oh, I think when it comes to having a professional player, it's going to be a lot of branding, right? Community growth. I think it's really important to establish like long-term fans, and a lot of these players have developed a fan base like just by competing in a lot of events, and a lot of people want to see them succeed. So you'll see them following the players that they want to succeed, and then following the organization because you know that that organization is now supporting that player. Like for example, when I was watching some of the YCS events, like Yishan, he's not really that big, but I saw him running I think it was a Grand Maju stun one time, and I was just like, man, that's so cool. And then I became a Yishan fan. So then let's say if somebody sponsors Yishan, for example, then like I would want to follow that organization to see, hey, I was just giving an example, by the way. This has nothing. I've never even talked to Yishan in my life. I was just using that as an example.
I got it. No, totally understand. Totally understand. Um, that's great. Yeah. So I think like, cause after the post got made, like I got really excited. I was like, man, like Yu-Gi-Oh Esports when? Because that was the tweet. It was like literally Yu-Gi-Oh Esports when. In my head, what I had a hard time coming to terms with was like, I don't even know what the injection of Yu-Gi-Oh like other esports organization would look like, because what do you think will happen to like all the local teams that we have right now, right? Because there's a lot of like quote unquote like teams in Yu-Gi-Oh that, I mean, you might be familiar with some of them, like I'm part of like, let's say like Luxury Gaming, for example.
Yeah.
What, like, have you seen in other games what that looks like when like there's local teams, you have a really big organization comes in, they start signing players, like what happens to all the teams that are local, if that makes sense, you know?
All local teams in any game will generally survive. It kind of all depends on how Konami ends up structuring the quote unquote professional scene. So you see a lot in other like PC games that you'll see the amateur scene, and those will be a lot of like just 5 people coming together, trying to form a team and building it and calling it, Team Cloudfire or something like that. Just something random just to kind of brand themselves. So I think it'll still stay. You're gonna see these local teams form and they'll still be fine. It just depends on at the end of the day where the money goes. So you're gonna see the best players that potentially have the most viewership, that has the most loyal fan base. Those are going to be the ones that are probably desirable to sign as a player. And I think that you'll see these local teams just kind of end up being like what's the word, like they're just teams that are the conduit to becoming a pro. So you'll rarely see a lot of free agents that aren't part of organizations just immediately sign to an organization. You kind of have to be part of something small, whether it's just a hypothetically made up team or a local team or an amateur team, in order for you to get noticed. So I think that eventually you'll see these local teams be sort of that progression into the professional scene.
Okay, that's actually, so that brings up a really interesting topic, because you're essentially talking about like this quote unquote like road to pro, kind of like what with Magic. That's what they kind of had, like the Pro Tour, right? Like you had this kind of like path that was basically designed by Magic to get you to becoming a pro player. And it's so funny because every time someone like calls me like a pro player or something like that, I was on Charlie's stream last night and he was like, man, Pac's a professional Yu-Gi-Oh player, all this stuff. I'm like, am I actually? Because when I think of like pro players, I think of like like I'll give an example of like in like League of Legends, right? You have like so many like insane players, like people who are like signed to actual organizations, or they're like, I don't know, like I see them, I watch them, and those are the type of people that I think of when I think of pro. But like Faker, like for example, is like a very big name.
Yeah, T1 Faker.
Yeah, like I was a huge fan of T1 Faker. But the thing is, like in your eyes, when you think of like organizations, like esports organizations, like what is a pro Yu-Gi-Oh player in your eyes?
Well, I think it's so the term,
like, is it just
pro...
like tops? Yeah, is it just like having a certain amount of tops? Like, is it just I mean, obviously you're not gonna be like the guy topping like his locals every now and then like a pro, but like like what defines a pro, I guess, for you, and as you like try to like venture into like signing players.
So the term professional, in a sense, has kind of evolved over time. I think a couple of years ago you could get away with just performance, but I think that as esports is still evolving, the content creator space has been very, very big. So I think that to become a pro player, at least in a game where there really isn't a reward for being quote unquote competitive, other than, I don't know, getting like prize packs, but who knows, that could change with Master Duel. But basically, I think that a pro player in Yu-Gi-Oh would be somebody that is streaming, that's creating content, that's having an impressionable fan base, and one that is competing. And, for the viewership that they aren't able to get on their own streams, they're able to subsidize that with viewership on, let's say, the mainstream, which would be like Yu-Gi-Oh's, Konami's TCG stream. So depending on how they structure that, that's kind of how I see a pro player. And obviously I see a pro player as somebody that's signed to an organization. So yeah, I think that signing to a professional organization, which is currently not really seen much, like the only one closest I would say is like Distant Coder on like Lazarus. But that's more so from a content creator's perspective. That's the only organization really that I've seen coming into the space. At least before us, because we're going to come in hopefully soon. So I think it's kind of you just got to create a snowball effect. So right now, there's no esports organization that's going to, like sponsor or fund a player when there really isn't a structured event around the space. For example, like you were saying, you know, esports organizations don't really run events. It's third parties, and the third parties, what, they're like a couple $100. Like that's not going to do anything. Like no organization is going to want to invest into a pro player if like the only thing that they're shooting for is like $100 or like a booster box. So that's why I think that 100 Thieves post was very interesting, because like they're gonna come in from a content creator space. They're not gonna come in from a pro space because there isn't an
Okay.
ecosystem that allows pro players to thrive right now. It's just kind of revolving around a content creator space. So like what we're trying to do right now is like right now I'm gonna be testing the water. So I'm putting a lot of like kind of my own sort of passion projects, like I'm trying to run like hopefully monthly like Yu-Gi-Oh tournaments. That way we keep it consistent, with hopefully heightened prize money, so that way we can get sort of consistency, because it's not like Konami has really been that consistent in their events, especially with COVID and all that stuff, plus their ban list. Like let's not even talk about the consistency of their ban lists. So I think it's important that right now somebody, it doesn't have to be us, but right now I don't see anybody else really running consistent events other than really you. But we want to start doing that from a more professional perspective. I want to start getting like broadcasts. I really want to start getting like the value of having esports players in Yu-Gi-Oh a thing. Whether it's a really, really small scale, and then eventually, fingers crossed, right now, trying to get in contact with Konami in order for us to do something on a much larger scale. So that way, then larger organizations can start coming in. Because what I think is going to happen is, the Knights are going to be running sort of regular events that'll probably attract more of the mid-tier organizations and potentially like the local organizations that you are talking about. And then as that scene grows, then hopefully the prize pool can grow. Hopefully the winnings can grow. And then once Konami can hopefully see this, then fingers crossed we partner with Konami, do something on a much larger scale. Then a bunch of organizations can start seeing the value of having a pro player.
Right. Because I think like the way you frame it almost makes it seem like it's not mainly just about the prize money. It's like such a small. It's not a small percentage, but it's like one of the I guess factors that you consider, but it's not the end all be all, it seems. And that like viewership also is really important, right? And like also having like a dedicated fan base is also really important, correct? Like it's what you're essentially getting at. And I think that's eye opening. Yeah, that's super eye opening for sure.
Yeah, one more thing to add is that so prize money is like the lowest, most inconsistent way for organizations to make money. Like we're not, it's really hard to bank, especially let's say like a battle royale game, right? Like 20 teams, free for all, like really, really hard to like say, oh, I can project and predict that I'm going to be winning this much prize money. Like anything can happen in a battle royale. In stuff like this, I think that if we can get integration with like virtual goods, for example, you see these Halo esports skins, you see Rocket League esports. Like we just released a decal on Rocket League, which we get revenue from the developers. So if that can be a direction that Konami ends up taking, I think that they can easily attract organizations to come on board, because game developer revenue like that is extremely valuable to the organizations and is a really big incentive for us to invest and put some time into developing players. So like it could be card backs, right? Like card back design. It could be a potential Knights Yu-Gi-Oh card as a design for potentially like later. There's a lot of like different ways that they can integrate esports teams, whether it's from a promotional standpoint or a direct like revenue share uh, way. But those are kind of my 2 cents on how I think that esports organizations can be lucrative in the space.
Yeah. And I guess like I mean you've played Master, right? I think you mentioned that you've made it to platinum.
I am officially plat 4 right now
Plat
with
4, nice.
Magistus.
I'm plat 3. I'm slowly working my way up. um, so you've seen how the game is currently structured, right? Like best of
Yeah.
one, no side decking, and you came from like the official TCG. I mean, what is your thoughts on that? Do you think it's actually viable to host to have a tournament setting with the way that the game is currently structured, at least on Master Duel? Or like, or
Uh,
do you think it's like from a maybe TCG perspective? Like, where do you see like is the space in Master Duel? Is the space in the TCG? Like, what are your thoughts?
I think it's fine from a TO perspective. I think it's gonna be really bad from the player perspective. Like, think about it like this: what if I were to run a $50,000 Master Duel tournament, right? And you prepare the best deck, and then you just get faced with a Mystic Mine, or you get faced with like,
Thank God, of
Eldritch
course,
with
Ben.
triple skill. Oh yeah, Eldritch with like triple skill drain. You're just like, well, okay, I didn't want to play the game anyways, right? Like, as a player, you want to think about how you can uh, create the best odds for you to win. But like in a best of one kind of duel, you can't really do that. So at that point, it becomes RNG of like, you're never gonna be able to predict all the decks out there. Like it takes skill to be able to swap out your side deck and swap in Drolls or Cosmic Cyclones or whatever. So I think that from an organization perspective, sure, we can run the events, every day. It doesn't really matter. But I think it's from the experience of the player, it's just going to be really bad. So I would hope that Master Duel ends up implementing a side deck function, just for that sort of scene to grow. I do not think that a best of one will survive long term if we wanted to actually grow to tens of twenties of thirties of $50,000 events. It wouldn't make sense. Like I would be so pissed if I just lost to something dumb and I'm like, okay, well, all right, that was a waste.
Yeah. Right. Or they open like the God Hand and you're just like, yep, I guess I'll just pack up my cards. No, I totally
Yeah.
understand. I mean, so I guess like. So I've been in like talks with like my team, like Luxury Gaming, and we've like been trying to like come up with ideas about how we can like make the scene more exciting for maybe esports organizations like yourself to maybe come into the scene and like draw more eyes into it, right? One of the things that we've noticed that is done in other games is that there's usually some sort of crowd-funded tournament, right? And
Yeah.
that's where majority of the money is coming from. I believe Dota World Championship was completely crowd-funded. And that was a huge success, like over 100K viewership, in the space, through like their mainstream. And we were thinking about what if we run like a crowd-funded tournament for the community or something. Like if everyone right now watching Master Duel donates $1, and then all of that goes into like a really big prize pool, like like do you think that maybe will be more attractive for players? Because not only do you get like obviously there's the prize pool, but you also get like the best of the best players coming out, like the people who have dedicated fan bases, the people who when you stream their matches, they have people cheering for them, right? Like that excitement of like having like people who are they have followers, they have fans, like and there's gonna be a lot of people like regardless of who streams the tournament, regardless of like where it's being streamed, it's probably gonna get a huge probably like attendance from a player perspective, but also from a viewership perspective, right? Like Summit, even for like Smash, does something very similar. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Like, about making that like a thing, or like I know you mentioned that starting smaller is better. I mean, and I can definitely agree with that, and like working your way up as well. But I mean, what are your thoughts on like having something like that happen in the Yu-Gi-Oh space, and we kind of like take the reins ourselves instead of waiting for something to happen with like Yu-Gi-Oh, or like something to happen with Master Duel, something along those lines?
So this is purely my own opinions. I mean, like
Sure, sure.
I follow the Smash scene because I love Melee, so I'm very aware of the Summit structure.
Nice.
So Falco main, by the way. But in my opinion, I think that crowdfunded tournaments are totally fine. I think they're great. But you can only do like one, maybe twice a year. I think there's diminishing returns after if you're running too many and it becomes oversaturated. So that's why you see Summit running it like once a year, right? That's why Dota's crowdfunding thing is once a year. Because you need a lot of promotion and you need a lot of like lead up to that for it to be successful. And I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! 100% you could do a crowdfunded tournament. However, if you're looking to run more events, then like again, you just want to be kind of cautious on over supplying an expectation to people, because if you run $10,000 events, then people might say, oh well, like, oh, they're not running a $10,000 event next time, right? So I like, that's kind of why I'm trying to be careful not to like, look, we're an esports organization, right? We have funding. We could just come into the space and drop 20 grand on a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. But that's just not healthy for the space. Like what if what if I came in and then dropped that and then just be like, all right, I'm dipping, peace. Like then all the other organizations were like, okay, I'm gonna run this $100 event. Like the hype is lost, right? The excitement is gone. So I think it's I think for me, I just prefer more of a progression. And the only reason why I would think like we would want to boost a ton of money is if we can do it consistently. Otherwise, like yeah, I don't know. That's just kind of
Yeah,
my perspective. But I think crowdfunding is totally fine. If you want to
yeah,
do like a once a year kind of crowdfunded event that I would say like you want to focus really on the experience when you're doing
right.
crowdfunding events.
Mhm.
Because like the experience from a grassroots perspective is way more valuable than I think the prize money itself.
100%. I think like the reason why like I think it would be cool, not even from a prize money perspective, is the fact that people are kind of willing to chip in to make Yu-Gi-Oh a bigger game, if that makes sense. Like I think it's more symbolic of that rather than having like a $50,000 tournament, but rather the fact that like there are players who are fans of the game. Maybe they play the game, maybe they don't, or they used to, or all, et cetera, right? But the idea is that they just love this and they love watching it. They might not even play in it, but they want to make it a reality, right? And maybe that's through like $1 or $2 that they can, comfortably give up. Because I think that would be like really cool. Because I guess the thing that I always like struggle to understand now is like with the whole scene is that like where does it, like Yu-Gi-Oh's getting a big space right now, right? I think we're getting like insane amount of viewership. So like is it just viewership at that point? Like, I always think of esports as something like more competitive. Like people look forward to tournaments as like, some stuff happening. But as of right now, we're kind of like in a dry, but it's also like only been a week or 2 weeks, of like the game being out. So can't really ask for too much, but so far it's been pretty dry. Like people are looking for things to do. That's why a lot of people are on like Duel Links meta stream. They're literally fiending, waiting to play in these $100 tournaments because they complete everything. They're plat 1. They've done all the solo missions. But the question becomes like, what's next for the community? What's next for Yu-Gi-Oh? And I think that's what I'm struggling to understand. And I think it's obviously I'm gonna have to like be a little bit more patient. But that's kind of like where I'm trying to like trying to figure it out. But the game is moving really fast, obviously, so a lot's happening. Game's moving really fast, a lot is happening, and it's kind of, I think to a certain point, even overwhelming, right? Especially from a content creator perspective, because I'm like, man, like last week I was streaming to like 100 people. Now it's like 700 people here, and there's like, it's like so many people are entering the scene more than ever, and it's so fascinating to see.
I think that Konami, transparently, I don't think that they were prepared as it has blown up the way it is. I think that this is a new space to them. So I think that, unfortunately, in my opinion, I think that Konami is going to take a bit of time before they really like embrace this competitive nature and this culture of Yu-Gi-Oh and just esports in general. So I don't know if we're gonna see a ton from from the developer side. Fingers crossed we do end up seeing something faster. But the thing that sustains large events, large prize pools is going to be sponsorships. That's a big one. So I think my goal for the organization, because I'm not just trying to put money well, I mean, I want to first help and be passionate about the game because I love Yu-Gi-Oh, so I've been just trying to find ways to like push money into the scene. But I think that, sorry, let me just collect my thoughts real quick.
Yeah, sure,
I'll get
no
my point.
worries. I mean, it is crazy, right? Like, I don't think anyone ever anticipated that when Masuda dropped, this a huge spike in viewership would ever happen, right? Like, I don't think anyone was like, man, we're gonna get this many people, we're gonna it's gonna blow this crazy. Like, I don't think anyone expected that. Um,
Yeah,
but it
yeah,
happened.
it's
It
crazy.
happened. So then the question becomes, what's
Oh,
next, right?
yeah. So okay.
Okay.
So I think that what's next that's gonna happen is gonna be well, one, I want to start being the by me I say the Pittsburgh Knights. I want the Pittsburgh Knights to be sort of a pillar in the early development of events in Yu-Gi-Oh. Right now, we've been dominating this space when it comes to events for multiple games, and I want to provide an experience for the fans of Yu-Gi-Oh to participate in something regularly and build up that ecosystem. I'm going to try to talk to some of our organization friends because I mean we're all like a lot of the esports organizations are just friends with each other. So I want to try to like build that scene because I transparently don't know if Konami's ready to do that. They've been pretty reserved, in all of their decision making up till now. So I think that it has to be built by us, like by the organizations. So I'm hoping that eventually we create a system where the Knights are running like a regular Yu-Gi-Oh event, and that can be used as a funneling just for us to see are they going to be a pro player or not. So that way it can be a scouting tool for us as well. So I'm hoping that can be
That makes sense.
replicated across all the organizations so that way we actually build this infrastructure where we can all use our own events to scout and to develop that scene, and then hopefully Konami will catch on to say, "Oh, wow, this is crazy. Let's do something."
Yeah, no,
So like I
that's
think
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of I think the next steps, or at least ideally the next steps for Yu-Gi-Oh.
What do you think, like, what does the road to pro look like for you? Is it just through those tryouts? I mean, like, what if someone just comes out of nowhere, in one of the tournaments that you're hosting, just wins it, you know, but they're like completely brand new, not as known, right? Like, would you see that as like, oh, this guy just got lucky, or would like, how would you, like, what does that look like for you, right? Like the road to like being a pro Yu-Gi-Oh player.
It's
'Cause
funny because that happens everywhere, right? Like
yeah,
you have this like random team that just upset over upset over upset and just like somehow wins. You're just like, holy crap! This team just like defeated everyone, or like in this instance, a player just like upsets everyone. You kind of it's hard because you kind of have to see their actions post to see how they're actually like taking advantage of it. Because a lot of people, at least what I've seen in Yu-Gi-Oh, a lot of them just like they win, they do like a deck profile, and then you just like don't hear from them again until you see them competing potentially at another event. So a lot of the times when you see somebody winning an event, that's like their spearhead opportunity to like start doing content, to start like building their fan base, because everyone's eyes are on that person.
that's so funny
So
because that's what I did.
yeah, exactly. And I think that was like that's what's crazy, I think, about your development, because I've seen you when you were like just starting, and I was congratulations for all the success that you've had
Thank
for
you, thank you,
all of
thank you.
this. But it's just like, I think that not everyone can be a professional player. I think the ones that are going to be professional players are the ones that actually do actions that can allow them to be uh, um, attractable for organizations. For example, are you creating content? Are you personable? Do you have a good social presence? Do you have a good community? Are you competing and being consistent? Like, one-off wins don't mean a thing. But if you have multiple top four finishes, or if you are like, somebody that's going to multiple events, there's inherent value of just talking to people, networking, right? Gaining a fan base, getting people to know who you are, rather than just like randomly winning and then just not talking to anybody. So there's a lot of things that
Right.
kind of make up an esports player, I think, nowadays. And I think that, you know, unless you are winning every single event consistently, I think what you need to do to subsidize that, because you're not gonna, like, let's be real, you're not gonna win all the time. So you're not always gonna be in front of millions of eyes watching the YCS. So you need to find a way to spend that time to get noticed in other ways. For example, content creation and streaming. So that's how I see pro players forming. Unfortunately, it's kind of like one of those, if you're very popular, of course people are going to notice you. But I think hopefully it'll come with both. Like, I think that you are a really good blend of somebody that's doing really good content creation both on Twitch, YouTube, and also a good player. And then you see like other streamers, I'm not going to say any names, but the ones that are like really really funny but may not be like the best player. So I don't know. It's it's a balance for sure.
Yeah, right. No, totally understand. Um, totally understand. I mean, wow, this has been a great conversation. I really liked the insight you gave us into, the thoughts about everyone spamming. The thoughts that you gave us, I guess, just about like, you as the CFO of a esports organization, what you look for, what you envision the space should look like, and I don't know. Like, I think this is interesting. I mean, bro, we're in very exciting times, as you can probably tell. Um, yeah. No, this has been great. No, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, just as a closing, like, I'm very hopeful, and I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Esports will become a thing. I think it's gonna take a lot of us to work collaboratively together to make that happen. I think that there's always going to be toxicity of people saying like, oh, this person's doing the same thing that I'm doing and we're going to be enemies or something like that. And I think that for a growing I think from a growing industry perspective, you need healthy rivalries, you need healthy collaborations, you need to have people working together in order to make something, because at the end of the day, if we try to keep spending the time fighting against each other, we're never really going to grow. Like, I'd rather be somebody that owns something with another person if we have, like, let's say $100,000 worth of value, versus like that person owning 20,000 and me owning 20,000, because we just keep competing against each other, right? Like, I'd rather work together and build something big than to work separately and keep our small niche,
Yeah.
like, thing that's going.
No, and I think that's great. Yeah, I actually man, I've been theorizing a lot of really sick ideas actually. Like one of them, I'll give an example, is if you're familiar with Metafy, I'm on there as a coach, and a bunch of my teammates are also going to be coaches on that platform. And we were thinking of like doing a weekly like series, for example, to basically get people to become quote unquote like pro, or like to get them good. Um, and then doing like these, like I would have 8 of my students on Metafy play against like Hani's 8 students on Metafy, and we would have like every week one of our students would play against each other. We would go over the replay, see how they can improve, what they did wrong, what they did right, and it'll be kind of like a friendly competition to see like how many of our students are like coming out on top, and then we send them into like a really big tournament and then see how they perform, right? Um, and then in a way they get to like make a name for themselves, as someone who like started, not too long ago, improve, and like it's almost like a UFC. Like that's where the idea originally came from. Like Nick, the owner of my team, like gave me that idea about like, what if we do like a UFC but for Yu-Gi-Oh, and like, we can involve like Metafy, like the coaching component, and involve like also um organizations in a way, because they would be like, oh my god, wait, these guys are actually trying to get good. They are actually preparing to like, try and like become better. Like there's a competitive scene, which I think is very important too, like showing, organizations that, there is a competitive scene, that there are people who are looking to not play the game just for fun or anything like that, but there are people who are there who wants to be the best, and there are people who will, spend money for coaching. There are people who will dedicate the time to get better, and I think that's kind of like, maybe kind of like not even the core of my channel, but like that's one of like the things that I was always trying to like instill when I was like creating this Twitch and YouTube, that like, anyone can get good if they put the time, the hours in, but they have to want it, right? And I think this would be like a cool way to show, like, like Nick's in the chat saying Ultimate Duelist Club, to show that there are people out there like that. And I think it in a way also helps it for organizations who are looking to scout, quote unquote rookies, as you would call them, right? Or people who are like coming up on the scene. And also at the end of the day, be also good content. Like people have something every week to come look forward to see matches between two like, X, Y, and Z players, students, and see how they improve, see where they're at. But I mean,
Yeah.
there's so much stuff, so many ideas like that, like I've been thinking of, that I want to like definitely make reality. But so, we'll definitely be in more talks. Like I'll definitely reach out to you more and like see if we can, work together, like you said, right? Like it's not really,
Yeah, there's 100%. I mean,
yeah,
I obviously I'm happy to work with you in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Global League that we're already doing right now,
right,
and I like want to continue to do more joint collaborative efforts.
yeah,
I think that right now there really isn't an optimal funnel for up and coming pro players or players that play competitively to really get noticed. It's really hard
it's very
for people to
tough.
do that.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
tough.
so
Yeah,
I think that if we can figure out a way to create that sort of ecosystem, then one, it'll just make more competitive players like viable. It'll get more people out there. Like I bet you most organizations out there don't even know who to sponsor,
no,
because
yeah,
like
for sure.
how do they know these like what are you just gonna look up top 4 YCS? Well, like
Yeah,
yeah, like it's really hard. So I mean, the one thing that I see immediately is like the people that stream, the people that are, creating content. Like I see, Pack, I see Farfa, I see, MBT, Gage, all these people that, they're going out to events. Now, are they the best players? No, not at all. But you see them competing and going out there and being consistent, and that to me is more valuable than just a one-off win. So I would just say that, like, for anybody that's out there watching this, just be very consistent, and just keep creating content. It's gonna be really shit in the beginning, which is, understandable, but it it'll get noticed, and we see
right,
that.
right, yeah, 100%. No, and I think like I think that's a great point. I think like that's why like I wanted to like do this and perform this, because like in my head I was like, what if we just create like a way or like a scene for people to become quote unquote like pros, you know what I mean, or that kind of stuff. So I mean, yeah, no, 100%.
Well, appreciate you having me on stream. Do you mind if I
Yeah,
say a quick like
please plug
shout
in.
out a
Yeah, of
couple of
course,
things?
please,
Plugs.
please do. Yeah, of course.
First plug in the Knights. Follow Knights at Knights GG on Twitter. It's
Yep.
the organization that I'm part of. Join the Discord, the YGO Global League. We're looking at kind of putting all of our Yu-Gi-Oh efforts into that. I'll probably be putting a lot of the Knights efforts also into that Discord, to make sure that it's Yu-Gi-Oh focused, and we're staying true to to who we are. Like I don't want it to be too different than what you guys are already experiencing. I only want to make it better. So join
Yeah.
the YGO Global League. And then just watch out for our event on February 5th and 6th. Just as a quick thing, it's probably going to be a $5 entry, and we're probably going to make it a $1,000 event.
Oh, that's
So
awesome. That sounds
yeah,
great.
so that's kind
Yeah.
of our first entrance into the tournament event running space. Oh, we've already been running events in general in other games,
Yep.
but like specifically in Yu-Gi-Oh! And hopefully we will continue to create more.
No, awesome. Yeah. Let
And
me
hopefully
once.
together with Pack as well.
No, I appreciate that. No, really appreciate you coming on. No, I appreciate the kind words. And yeah, let's yeah, once you give me that information, I'll definitely help spread the word and make that event, awesome. Like I love playing Yu-Gi-Oh! I love seeing players play. So this is gonna be exciting. So definitely let me know when, like once you get more details, I guess. And yeah, we'll run it.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch for sure.
Awesome. All right. Thank you again. I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Yep, see ya.
Awesome. All right, chat. That was awesome. Man, what a great conversation.